The Grand Nexus station floated in the darkness of space like a massive wheel of silver and glass. Ships from across the galaxy docked at its ports. Inside the main hall, hundreds of alien beings gathered to watch Earth's first military demonstration. Captain Taman stood on the bridge of his ship, the Aegis Prime, and looked at the view screen. He could see the station and all the alien vessels surrounding it. They looked beautiful, sleek, advanced. His ship looked nothing like them. Commander Hyojin walked up beside him. She was his second in command and his oldest friend. Her face was calm, but Taman knew her well enough to see the tension in her eyes. "They are already talking about us," she said quietly. "The alien channels are full of jokes." Taman nodded. He had expected this. Earth had joined the Galactic Council only 5 years ago. The humans were new, primitive. They barely understood faster-than-light travel when the aliens found them. Now Earth was required to show its military strength. It was council law. Every member species had to prove they could defend themselves. "Let them laugh," Taman said. "We will do our job," Lieutenant Jiwoo called from the engineering station. "Captain, all systems are ready. The ship is running perfectly." She sounded proud. Jiwoo had helped design many of the Aegis Prime systems. She knew every pipe, every wire, every circuit. The Aegis Prime moved into the demonstration zone. Taman heard the alien communications clearly. The translators worked well. What he heard made his jaw tight. "Look at that ugly box," one alien voice said. It was High Admiral Velcor of the Krithian Empire. His species had been in space for thousands of years. The humans built a cargo ship and put guns on it. Laughter echoed across the communication channels. Other aliens joined in. They pointed out everything wrong with the Aegis Prime. The armor was too thick and heavy. The weapons were visible on the outside instead of hidden in the hull. The antenna arrays stuck out awkwardly. The whole ship looked like someone had welded spare parts together. What the aliens did not understand was simple. Humans built things differently. The thick armor was made of ceramic and metal that spread out energy weapon hits. The visible weapons could be replaced quickly if they broke. The antenna arrays had backups for the backups. If one system failed, 3 others would take over. The Aegis Prime was not pretty, but it was tough. Dr. Yoonji, the science officer, looked up from her console. "Captain, several alien ships are scanning us. They are trying to learn our technology." "Let them scan," Taman replied. "They will not find anything they expect." The demonstration began. The Aegis Prime had to complete several tests. First, target practice. Drone ships appeared in space, small and fast. The Aegis Prime fired its railguns. These were simple weapons that shot metal slugs very fast. Boom, boom, boom. Each drone exploded. The test was passed, but the aliens were not impressed. Their energy weapons were faster and could fire more often. Next came the shield test. The station fired low-power energy beams at the Aegis Prime. The ship's shields lit up, glowing blue as they absorbed the energy. But the shields flickered. They were not as smooth as alien shields. They looked weak. "Primitive technology," Velcor announced to everyone listening. "Their shields barely hold. One real attack and that ship would break apart." Hee-Jin clenched her fists. Taman put a hand on her shoulder. "Easy," he whispered. "Words cannot hurt us. The final test was speed." The Aegis Prime activated its faster-than-light drive and jumped to a point far from the station, then jumped back. The jumps were successful but slow. Most alien ships could make the same journey in half the time. When the demonstration ended, the judgment came quickly. Counselor Thelwyn of the Valorian Collective spoke for many species. "Earth has met the minimum requirements," she said diplomatically. "However, your military capabilities are significantly behind current standards. We recommend you focus on trade and cultural exchange rather than military development." It was a polite way of saying humans were weak. High Admiral Velcor was less polite. "The human ship is 50 years out of date. It would last maybe 10 minutes in a real battle. I hope Earth never faces a real enemy because that ship will not save you." The Aegis Prime began moving toward the docking port. The crew was silent. They had passed the tests, but everyone knew the truth. The galaxy thought humans were a joke. Taman looked at his crew. They were good people, brave, smart, but they felt the shame of being mocked. "Captain," Jiwoo said softly, "we did our best." "I know," Taman replied. "That is all we can ever do." In a distant observation room, Ambassador Colvan watched the proceedings. His species, the Archons, were ancient. They had seen countless civilizations rise and fall. Colvin was assigned to observe young species and report on their potential. He made notes about humanity in his datapad. The other observers had dismissed the humans quickly. Colvin was not so sure. He had noticed things. The human crew worked together with unusual efficiency. When one person gave an order, others responded instantly. There was no hesitation, no questioning. The humans trusted each other completely. Also, their weapons were interesting. Yes, the railguns were primitive, but they were reliable. Energy weapons could fail if hit by electromagnetic pulses. Railguns would work no matter what. The bulky armor looked crude, but it would actually protect better against certain attacks than elegant energy shields. Colvin wrote in his report, "Humans may be more dangerous than initial assessment suggests. Recommend continued observation." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. The communication channels exploded with panicked voices. Taman looked at his sensor display and felt his blood go cold. "Multiple contacts," Dr. Yunji announced, her voice shaking. "Hundreds of ships just appeared at the edge of the system. They are coming fast." Heejin pulled up the identification data. Her face went pale. "Ravager swarm," she whispered. Taman had read about the Ravager swarm in Earth's intelligence files. They were a hive mind species. Every ship, every creature connected to one collective consciousness. They attacked in massive numbers, overwhelming defenses through sheer force. They had been quiet for decades, hiding in deep space. Until now, a message came through on all channels. The voice was strange, like 1,000 voices speaking as one. "We are the Ravager swarm. Surrender the station and all ships. Resistance will result in consumption. You have 1 minute to comply." Panic spread through the alien fleet. Most of the Council's military ships were far away, at their home systems. Only a few warships were present at the station. They were supposed to be enough for any small threat. But this was not a small threat. This was an invasion force. High Admiral Velkor's voice cut through the chaos. "All ships, battle formation. We will defend the station." He sounded confident. The Krithian Empire had fought wars for thousands of years. They knew how to fight. Taman looked at his crew. This was it, their first real battle. The galaxy had laughed at them just minutes ago. Now that same galaxy needed help. He took a deep breath. "All hands battle stations," he ordered. "Charge all weapons. Maximum power to shields. This is not a drill." Sergeant Daejung called from the Marine Bay. "Sir, my troops are ready. If those things try to board us, we will be waiting." The Ravager swarm rushed toward the station like a wave of death. Their ships were organic, grown rather than built. They looked like massive insects with metal grafted onto their bodies. There were so many of them that they blocked out the stars. Taman watched them come. The aliens had laughed at his ship. They had called it primitive and weak. Soon everyone would learn the truth. The Aegis Prime was not built to look impressive. It was built to fight. And humans knew how to fight. "Steady," he said to his crew. "Hold your fire until they are in range. Make every shot count." The battle for Nexus Station was about to begin, and nothing would ever be the same. The Ravager swarm hit the Council fleet like a hammer. The first wave consisted of small ships packed with explosives. They flew straight at the defending vessels with no regard for their own survival. Dozens of them exploded against the Council's shields, draining energy with each blast. High Admiral Velkor commanded the defense from his flagship. He ordered all ships into a tight formation with shields linked together. "Standard defensive pattern," he broadcast. "Hold the line. Their suicide attacks will exhaust themselves against our shields." The strategy worked at first. The combined shields of the Council fleet glowed bright blue, absorbing the explosions. Velkor smiled. He had fought battles like this before. The key was discipline. Stay in formation. Do not break ranks. Let the enemy waste their forces. Captain Taman watched the battle unfold from the Aegis Prime. He received Velkor's orders to join the formation, but he did not move. Commander Hyojin looked at him with concern. "Captain, the Admiral ordered us to join the defensive line," she said. "I heard him," Taman replied. "But his strategy is wrong." "Wrong? But he has thousands of years of military tradition." "That is the problem," Taman interrupted. "The swarm knows how the Council fights. They have studied it. This tight formation plays into their hands." He pointed at the view screen. "Look, the first wave is just to drain shields. The real attack comes next." As if on cue, the second wave of Ravager ships appeared. These were larger, covered in biological armor that glistened like wet skin. They did not explode. Instead, they fired acidic projectiles that ate through weakened shields and corroded metal armor. The Council ships held their formation, but Tae-min could see they were taking damage. Shields flickered, hull plating melted, and still Velcor ordered them to hold position. "Move us to the flank," Tae-min ordered. "Away from the formation. I want clear firing lanes." The Aegis Prime broke away from the main group. Several alien commanders noticed and voiced their disapproval, but Tae-min ignored them. He positioned his ship where he wanted it, isolated but with a perfect view of the battlefield. Then came the third wave. And this was what Tae-min had been expecting. Small, fast pods shot past the Council fleet entirely. They were heading for the station itself, where millions of civilians waited in terror. "Boarding pods," Dr. Yunji called out. "They are going to attack the station directly while we are pinned here." Velcor shouted orders, but his ships could not break formation without exposing themselves to the second wave. The tight defensive line that was supposed to be their strength had become a trap. They could not maneuver. They could not respond. They could only watch as hundreds of boarding pods streaked toward Nexus Station. "Lieutenant Jiwoo," Tae-min said calmly, "transfer all power from forward shields to engines and weapons." Jiwoo's eyes went wide. "Sir, that will leave our front exposed. Do it. We are going hunting." The Aegis Prime surged forward, accelerating directly into the path of the boarding pods. Tae-min was making his ship a target, drawing attention away from the defenseless station. It was insane. It was suicide. It was exactly what needed to happen. The Ravager swarm took the bait. Dozens of their attack ships changed course, moving to intercept the lone human vessel. In their hive-mind calculation, one isolated ship was easy prey. They were wrong. The Aegis Prime opened fire. The railguns roared, launching metal slugs at incredible speed. Each slug punched through the Ravager bioarmor like paper. Unlike energy weapons that heated up and needed time to cool, the railguns just kept firing. Boom, boom, boom. One enemy ship after another exploded. Hyejin coordinated the targeting. She had studied the swarm's attack patterns during the first few minutes of battle. She could predict where they would fly next. "Target Delta 7, she called out. 3 seconds. The weapons crew adjusted their aim. Exactly 3 seconds later, a Ravager ship flew into that exact spot. The railguns destroyed it. The boarding pods swarmed toward the Aegis Prime. The ship's point defense systems activated. These were simple ballistic cannons, the kind the aliens had mocked as ancient technology. But they created a wall of metal that shredded the incoming pods. Debris filled space around the human ship. Dr. Yunji worked frantically at her station. Every time a Ravager ship was destroyed, she analyzed the wreckage. She was looking for patterns, weaknesses. "Captain, their armor is strong against energy weapons, but weak against physical impacts. Our railguns are perfect for this fight." Meanwhile, the Council fleet continued to struggle. Velcor's flagship was taking concentrated fire. The swarm had identified him as the fleet commander and was focusing attacks on his ship. His shields were failing. "Support vessels, assist the flagship," Velcor commanded. But his own formation made it impossible. The other ships could not reach him without breaking the defensive line. And if they broke the line, the formation would collapse entirely. The Admiral's ship shuddered under repeated impacts. Acid ate through the hull. Internal explosions erupted. Velcor broadcast one final message: "For the glory of the Crithian Empire." Then his flagship broke apart, consumed by fire and vacuum. Chaos erupted in the Council fleet. Without central command, the careful formation began to fall apart. Ships drifted out of position. Shield links broke. The Ravager swarm pressed their advantage, sensing victory. On Nexus Station, Counselor Thel Wynn watched the disaster unfold. She had been a politician for decades, not a warrior. But she understood what was happening. The Council was losing. They needed someone who could adapt, who could think beyond traditional tactics. She made a decision that would change everything. She opened a direct channel to the Aegis Prime. "Captain Tae-min, this is Counselor Thel Wynn. I am granting you tactical command of all Council forces in this sector." Effective immediately, silence filled the bridge. Hyejin stared at Tae-min. This was unprecedented. A human from a species barely 5 years in the Council, given command over veteran alien crews. Tae-min did not hesitate. "All ships, this is Captain Tae-min. Break formation immediately. Spread out. Fight independently. Use your speed and maneuverability. Do not let them pin you down. Some alien commanders protested. This went against everything they knew. But others, seeing their comrades die in the rigid formation, obeyed. The Council fleet scattered, each ship choosing its own path. The effect was immediate. The Ravager swarm, programmed to fight organized formations, struggled against independent action. Their perfect coordination became a weakness. They could not adapt fast enough to dozens of different threats moving in unpredictable patterns. A Valorian ship swooped down and destroyed 3 Ravager vessels before speeding away. A Drax cruiser absorbed tremendous damage but delivered killing blows to enemy ships. The Aegis Prime continued its deadly dance, railguns never stopping, point defense systems creating zones of death around the ship. Tae-min coordinated it all. He spoke to each captain in their own way. Some needed clear orders, others needed suggestions. He adapted his command style to each species, each personality. Heejin helped him, translating his intent into language the aliens would understand and accept. The battle turned. Slowly, painfully, but it turned. The Ravager swarm was still numerous, but they were no longer overwhelming. The Council ships were fighting smart instead of fighting by the book. And smart was how you survived. Deep in swarm territory, War Master Nixvel observed the battle through the hive mind connection. He commanded from safety, far from the actual fighting. What he saw disturbed him. The humans had changed everything. The Council fleet was fighting in a new way, a dangerous way. The swarm mind calculated odds and outcomes. The invasion was still winnable, but the cost was rising. More importantly, these humans were teaching the other species new tactics. If the swarm did not adapt, future battles would be much harder. Nixvel made a decision. Withdraw, he commanded through the hive mind. Preserve forces. Learn from this encounter. The Ravager ships began retreating, pulling back in organized waves. The Council fleet, exhausted and damaged, did not pursue. They had survived. Barely. Tae-min slumped in his command chair. Around him, his crew looked stunned. They had just fought their first major battle. And somehow, impossibly, they had won. Ye-jin put a hand on his shoulder. "We did it," she whispered. "No," Tae-min replied, looking at the debris field where Velkor's ship had been. "We survived. That is not the same as winning." Throughout the galaxy, on every Council world, the news spread. Earth's primitive warship had helped save Nexus Station. The species that was laughed at just hours before had proven their worth in blood and fire. Nobody was laughing anymore. The Aegis Prime drifted in space near Nexus Station, covered in scars. Hull plates were missing in several places. One of the main weapon turrets was silent, destroyed by enemy fire. Emergency crews worked to patch holes in the outer hull. Inside, the ship looked even worse. Smoke still drifted through some corridors. Medical teams carried wounded crew members to the infirmary. Captain Tae-min walked through the damaged sections of his ship. He needed to see it with his own eyes. Every broken panel, every burned wall reminded him of the cost. 23 crew members were dead. 40 more were injured. The ship that was supposed to demonstrate Earth's capabilities had barely survived its first real fight. Lieutenant Ji-woo met him in the main engineering bay. Her face was covered in grease and sweat. She had been working non-stop since the battle ended. "Captain, I have good news and bad news," she said tiredly. "Give me the bad news first," Tae-min replied. "The ship needs at least 2 weeks in a proper repair facility. The structural damage is severe. We can fly, but one more battle like the last one and the Aegis Prime will break apart." "And the good news?" Ji-woo smiled weakly. "I can keep us flying for maybe 3 more fights before that happens." Tae-min laughed despite himself. That was so like Ji-woo, always finding a way to keep going. "Do what you can. I have a feeling we will need every advantage." Dr. Yoonji called him to the science lab. She had been studying the wreckage of destroyed Ravager ships. Pieces of their bioorganic hulls floated in space, collected by salvage drones. Now those pieces sat on examination tables, still slightly warm from internal biological processes. "Captain, I have found something important," Yoonji said. She pointed to a strange lump of flesh and metal fused together. "This is a neural node. It connects individual Ravager ships to their hive mind. Every ship has one." Tae-min looked at the alien technology. It pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. "What does this mean?" "It means their coordination is not magic. It is technology, and technology can be disrupted." Yoonji's eyes gleamed with excitement. "If we can capture an intact node and study it, We might be able to jam their communications, break their perfect coordination. Commander Hyejin, who had followed Taemin to the lab, understood immediately. We need to board one of their ships, while it is still operational. Exactly, Yoonji confirmed. But it must be done quickly, before the ship self-destructs or before the swarm realizes what we are doing. Taemin thought about this. A boarding action against a Ravager vessel would be incredibly dangerous. The creatures inside would fight with savage intensity. The ship itself might collapse around the boarding team. And if the swarm noticed, they would destroy the entire area to prevent the humans from succeeding. He called Sergeant Dae-jung to his office. The Marine commander was a tough woman with short black hair and scars on her arms. She had served in Earth's ground wars before joining the Space Forces. If anyone could lead a boarding action, it was her. Sergeant, I need volunteers for a dangerous mission. Taemin explained the situation. I will not order anyone to do this. The odds of survival are very low. Dae-jung did not hesitate. I will go, sir. And I know my Marines. They will volunteer too. You understand this is likely a one-way trip? Captain, every Marine knows that some missions require sacrifice. If getting that neural node can save lives later, then the trade is worth it. She saluted. We will not fail. The opportunity came sooner than expected. The Ravager swarm returned, probing the station's defenses with small groups of ships. They were testing, learning, preparing for another major assault. The Council fleet engaged them in brief skirmishes, trying to keep them at bay. During one engagement, a Ravager vessel took heavy damage but did not explode. It drifted away from the main battle, leaking biological fluids but still operational. Taemin saw his chance. Sergeant Dae-jung, prepare your team. We are going now. 12 Marines loaded into a modified cargo pod. Jiwoo had designed it to look like debris so the swarm would ignore it. They launched quietly, floating toward the damaged Ravager ship on minimal power. Inside the pod, Dae-jung checked her weapons one last time. Her squad did the same. They reached the Ravager vessel and attached explosive charges to its biohull. The charges were specially designed by Jiwoo to cut through organic armor without causing a catastrophic explosion. The hull split open, revealing dark corridors inside. The Marines climbed in, weapons ready. The inside of a Ravager ship was nightmare fuel. The walls were not metal but living tissue. They pulsed and moved. Strange organic growths covered everything. The air was thick and humid, hard to breathe. And somewhere in the darkness, things were moving. The first Ravager warrior appeared without warning. It was roughly human-sized but covered in chitinous armor. Its limbs ended in sharp claws. It screamed, a sound like metal scraping on metal, and charged. Dae-jung shot it 3 times. The creature fell, but 2 more emerged from side passages. Her squad formed a defensive circle, firing in disciplined bursts. The Marines had trained for close-quarters combat their entire careers. In the tight corridors of the Ravager ship, their training was perfect for the situation. They fought their way deeper into the ship. Chunji had provided them with scanner data showing where the neural node should be located. But the path was not direct. They had to blow through blocked passages, climb over collapsed organic structures, and fight constantly against the defending creatures. One Marine fell, claws tearing through her armor. Another was pulled into a side passage and disappeared. But the rest kept moving forward. They had a mission. Personal survival was secondary. Finally, they reached the neural node chamber. It was a large room filled with pulsing biological machinery. The neural node sat in the center, a mass of tissue and circuits. Dae-jung grabbed it, ripping it free from its connections. Alarms blared throughout the ship. The Ravager swarm knew what had happened. Move! Get to the extraction point! Dae-jung shouted. Her remaining Marines ran back the way they came, but the path was now filled with enemies. Dozens of Ravager warriors poured into the corridors. Too many to fight through. Dae-jung made her decision in a heartbeat. She grabbed 2 Marines. You 2 take the node and go. Use the emergency route through the damaged section. Move fast and do not stop. Sergeant, what about you? One of them asked. We will buy you time, now go. She turned to the remaining 4 Marines. Set up defensive positions here. We hold this corridor no matter what. The 2 Marines ran, carrying the neural node. Behind them, they heard the sounds of battle. Gunfire, screams, explosions. Sergeant Dae-jung and her volunteers were keeping their promise. On the Aegis Prime Bridge, Taemin watched the mission unfold through the Marines' helmet cameras. He saw Dae-jung and her squad fighting against impossible odds. He saw them running out of ammunition and switching to knives and fists. He saw them being overwhelmed. The final transmission came from Dae-jung. Her voice was calm, almost peaceful. "Captain, the node is safely extracted. Mission successful. It has been an honor serving with you." Then her camera feed went dark. The Ravager ship's self-destruct activated, consuming everything inside in biological fire. The two surviving Marines reached the cargo pod and launched back to the Aegis Prime. They carried the neural node, bought with the lives of their comrades. When they delivered it to Dr. Yunji, their faces were blank, emotionless. The grief would come later. Right now, they had to finish the mission. Yunji and Jiwoo worked together frantically. They had to decode the neural node's signals before the swarm changed their communication frequencies. Hours passed with no sleep, no breaks, just desperate work against a ticking clock. Finally, Jiwoo shouted in triumph, "Got it, I can build a jammer based on these frequencies." She built the device using parts from across the ship. It was crude, held together with temporary welds and emergency circuits. But it would work. Probably. Maybe. Hopefully. The Ravager swarm attacked again the next day. This time they came in force, determined to finish what they started. The Council fleet prepared for what might be their final battle. But this time they had a secret weapon. As the swarm ships approached in their perfect coordinated formations, Taiman gave the order. "Activate the jammer." The device hummed to life, broadcasting disrupting signals across all Ravager communication frequencies. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The swarm ships, which had been moving in perfect synchronization, suddenly broke formation. They flew erratically, unable to coordinate with each other. The hive mind connection was scrambled. "All ships, attack now," Taiman commanded. The Council fleet surged forward, catching the disorganized swarm by surprise. What should have been a defensive battle became a slaughter. Ravager ships fell by the dozens. Unable to mount effective resistance, War Master Nixvel, watching from safety, felt something rare in the hive mind: frustration, anger, fear. The humans had done the impossible. They had disrupted the swarm's greatest advantage, and they had done it through sacrifice, ingenuity, and determination. The Ravager swarm retreated once more, but this time they were truly defeated. They had lost hundreds of ships and gained nothing. The humans had proven themselves again, not through superior technology, but through superior will. Later that night, Taiman stood in the memorial hall where the names of fallen crew members were displayed. Counselor Thelwyn arrived at the Aegis Prime in a small diplomatic shuttle. She walked through the damaged corridors without guards or ceremony. Captain Taiman met her in the conference room, looking tired but alert. He had not slept properly in 3 days. "Captain, the Council owes you a debt we can never fully repay," Thelwyn began. "Your actions have saved millions of lives, but I am not here just to give thanks. I am here with a warning." She activated a holographic display. It showed star maps and movement patterns. "Our intelligence network has detected something disturbing. The Ravager swarm is regrouping at the Kelvar Nebula. But they are not just gathering ships. They are changing tactics, adapting to fight humans specifically." Commander He-jin, standing beside Taemin, studied the maps. "How long until they attack again?" "That is the question," Thelwyn replied. "Ambassador Colvin believes they will strike at Earth directly. If the swarm destroys your homeworld, they eliminate the species that is teaching the Council how to fight back." Taemin felt cold. Earth. His home. Billions of people who had no idea what was coming. "When?" he asked. "Weeks. Maybe less." Thelwyn paused. "Captain, I have convinced the Council to form a joint task force. Several species are contributing ships, and I am offering you command." "You want us to attack them first," Taemin said. It was not a question. "Yes, hit them while they are still regrouping. Destroy their staging area before they can launch their assault on Earth. It is aggressive, risky, but it is the best chance we have." Taemin looked at Hyejin. She nodded slightly. Then he looked at the holographic map, calculating distances and odds. Finally, he looked back at Thelwyn. "We will do it. But my ship needs repairs and supplies. And I need good crews who are willing to follow human tactics. You will have everything you need, Thelwyn promised. Over the next week, the task force assembled. 3 Valorian fast attack ships arrived, their hulls gleaming with advanced shields. 2 massive Drax cruisers joined, carrying enough firepower to level planets. A young Crithian commander brought her dreadnought, determined to restore her species' honor after Velkor's failure. And the Aegis Prime, patched and jury-rigged but still flying, would lead them all. Dr. Yunji had improved the neural jammer. It was more powerful now and harder for the swarm to counter. But she warned Taemin that it would only work once or twice more. The Ravager hive mind learned quickly. Each time they faced the jammer, they would adapt their defenses. Lieutenant Jiwoo integrated some Valorian technology into the Aegis Prime. The new shields were better, but they drained power faster. The ship was becoming a strange hybrid of human and alien systems. Jiwoo joked that the Aegis Prime was held together by hope and spare parts. Nobody laughed. It was too close to the truth. The task force jumped to the Kelvar Nebula together. The nebula was a vast cloud of gas and dust that interfered with sensors. Perfect hiding place for a fleet. Also, perfect place for an ambush. Taemin ordered the ships to spread out and search systematically. No tight formations. Each ship independent but coordinated. Hours passed with nothing but sensor ghosts and false readings. Then one of the Valorian ships reported biosigns, massive ones, deep in the densest part of the nebula. The task force moved carefully toward the location, weapons ready, shields charged. What they found was worse than expected. The Ravager swarm was not just gathering ships. They were growing them. Massive organic vessels floated in the nebula, still gestating but nearly mature. There were hundreds of them. If these ships completed their growth and launched, they would outnumber every military force in Council space combined. We have to destroy them now, Hyejin said urgently. Before they wake up, Taemin agreed. He gave the order to attack. The task force opened fire on the immature vessels, pouring weapons fire into their vulnerable hulls. The giant ships began to die, bleeding biological fluids into space. But then the trap sprung. Ravager ships emerged from hiding all throughout the nebula. Dozens of them. They had been waiting, concealed by the nebula's interference. War Master Nixvel had expected the humans to come. He had prepared this ambush specifically for them. And the swarm had adapted. Instead of attacking in coordinated groups that the jammer could disrupt, they attacked in small, semi-independent cells. The hive mind had learned to compartmentalize, creating units that could function even if communication was interrupted. The nebula became a chaotic battlefield. The task force ships were separated by the interference, unable to support each other effectively. The Aegis Prime faced a dozen enemy vessels alone. The Valorian ships found themselves in a running battle they were losing. The Drax cruisers took heavy damage from swarm tactics. The Crithian dreadnought fought bravely but was being overwhelmed. Taemin realized they were being defeated not because the swarm was stronger, but because they were fighting the wrong battle. Nixvel wanted them focused on survival. He wanted them to forget why they came here. But Taemin had not come to survive. He had come to complete a mission. All ships, new orders, he broadcast. Ignore the attacking vessels. Focus everything on destroying the breeding ground. That is our objective. That is all that matters. Hyejin looked at him with shock. Captain, if we ignore the attackers, we will take massive damage. Yes. But if those giant ships mature, the war is lost. We die here completing the mission, or we live and lose everything later. I choose to complete the mission. The Aegis Prime turned away from its attackers and accelerated toward the nearest immature vessel. Enemy fire pounded its hull. Shields failed completely. Armor was stripped away layer by layer. Hull breaches killed crew members. But the railguns never stopped firing. The missiles kept launching. Every weapon the ship had was aimed at the breeding ground. The other ships saw what the humans were doing and followed. The Valorian commander ordered maximum speed toward the breeding vessels, ignoring the damage her ships were taking. The Drax cruisers formed a wedge, absorbing fire meant for lighter vessels, pushing forward despite catastrophic damage. The Crithian dreadnought, already crippled, positioned itself as a shield for the others, sacrificing itself so the mission could succeed. Jiwoo kept the Aegis Prime's engines running through sheer force of will. Systems that should have failed kept working. Power that should have been exhausted was somehow found. She rerouted everything, cannibalized backup systems, and pushed the ship beyond any safe limits. The engineering deck was on fire in 3 places, but the engines still roared. The immature vessels began to die. One by one they ruptured and collapsed, their biological structures unable to withstand the concentrated fire. The Ravager swarm realized too late what was happening. They had focused on killing the attacking ships when they should have protected the breeding ground. Human tactics had fooled them again. The final immature vessel exploded in a spectacular display of biological matter and energy. The breeding ground was destroyed. The mission was complete, but the cost was terrible. 1 Valorian ship was gone, simply erased by concentrated fire. Both Drax cruisers were so damaged they would have to be abandoned. The Crithian dreadnought was a floating wreck, most of its crew dead. The Aegis Prime barely qualified as a functioning ship anymore. Life support was failing. Weapons were silent. The engines were dying. War Master Nix Vel retreated again, but this time the hive mind was not calculating odds. It was experiencing something new. Frustration, confusion. These humans refused to behave rationally. They traded lives for objectives. They sacrificed the present for the future. They were chaos personified, impossible to predict or counter. The surviving ships limped away from the nebula. It took them 3 days to reach safe space. The Aegis Prime was held together by emergency patches and prayers. Half the crew was wounded. The other half was exhausted beyond measure. But they had won. They had prevented the swarm from creating an unstoppable fleet. Taemin sat in his damaged command chair and received a priority message. It was from Earth. Intelligence had confirmed Ambassador Colvin's prediction. The Ravager swarm was indeed planning to attack humanity's homeworld. They had no choice now. Humanity had proven too dangerous to ignore. The swarm would commit everything to destroying Earth, and the final battle would not be fought at some distant station or nebula. It would be fought in Earth's own solar system, for the survival of the human species. Heejin stood beside him, looking at the message. "Can we make it back in time?" Taemin called down to engineering. "Jiwoo, can this ship jump to Earth?" There was a long pause. Then Jiwoo's tired voice replied, "Give me 6 hours and a lot of luck. I will get us home, Captain, I promise." 6 hours later, the Aegis Prime made its final jump. Destination: Earth. The prototype warship that had been laughed at was returning home. Not in glory, but in pieces. Not victorious, but unbowed. Ready to fight one last time for the world that built it. The galaxy had learned that humans could fight. Now it would learn if humans could survive. Earth hung in the darkness of space, blue and beautiful and fragile. Captain Taemin looked at it through the view screen of the Aegis Prime and felt his chest tighten. Home. After weeks of fighting across the galaxy, he was finally home. But he was not returning in peace. He was returning with war following close behind. The Aegis Prime moved into orbit alongside dozens of other ships. Earth had been preparing. The orbital defense platforms were fully armed. Missile batteries covered the surface. Most importantly, other human warships were there. Not as advanced as the Aegis Prime, but functional. Earth had rushed them into service knowing that every weapon would count in the coming battle. Commander Heejin stood beside Taemin, watching their homeworld. "It is strange," she said quietly. "We have been fighting to protect people we could not see, but now they are right there. Billions of them. Our families, our friends, everyone we have ever known. That is why we will not lose," Taemin replied. A communication came from Earth Defense Command. They wanted Taemin to coordinate the overall defense from a command station on the surface. He refused politely but firmly. "The Aegis Prime is damaged, but she still fights. My crew has earned the right to defend our home from the front lines." The Defense Command understood. They sent replacement crew members to fill the gaps left by casualties. They sent supplies and ammunition. And they sent a message. Earth was proud of its first warship and the crew who had taken it into battle. Counselor Thelwyn arrived with a Valorian battle group. 20 ships, the largest force her species had deployed in generations. Other council species followed. Not everyone. Some chose neutrality, deciding that protecting Earth was too risky. But enough came that the defense had real strength. The Dracs sent their warrior clans. The Crithians committed their remaining fleet. Even smaller species contributed what they could. Ambassador Colvin arrived last, not with warships but with observation vessels. The Archons would not fight. Their species had abandoned warfare long ago. But they would watch. They would record. Whatever happened here would be remembered across the galaxy forever. The Ravager swarm came 3 days later. They did not announce their arrival. They simply appeared at the edge of the solar system in overwhelming numbers. Thousands of ships, so many that they blocked out the stars. War Master Nix Vel had committed the entire available force of the hive mind to this assault. He would destroy humanity completely or die trying. But the swarm did not rush forward blindly this time. They had learned. They advanced slowly, carefully, in multiple waves designed to counter every tactic the humans had used before. The first wave targeted the orbital platforms with long-range weapons. The second wave spread out to engage the defending fleet from multiple angles. The third wave held back, ready to exploit any weakness. The orbital platforms fired back, automated systems calculating perfect firing solutions. Ravager ships exploded, but more took their places. There were just too many. The platforms were destroyed one by one, taking enemy ships with them but ultimately being overwhelmed by numbers. Tae Min coordinated the fleet defense. He had learned from his mistakes at the nebula. This time, he did not order anyone to ignore incoming fire. This time the strategy was different. The defending fleet did not fight to hold ground. They fought in hit-and-run attacks, striking and withdrawing before the swarm could concentrate forces. It was frustrating for Nix Vel, who expected a decisive engagement. The Aegis Prime led by example. The damaged human ship darted between enemy formations, railguns firing constantly. Other human warships followed its lead, copying the tactics. The alien ships adapted their own fighting styles, combining council technology with human aggression. It was chaotic, unpredictable, and effective. Hours into the battle, Dr. Yunji made another breakthrough. She had been analyzing swarm communication patterns since the fight began. She noticed something important. The Ravagers could adapt tactically very fast, but strategic adaptation took longer. The hive mind could respond to immediate threats quickly but struggled to change long-term plans. "Captain, I have an idea," she said excitedly. "We can use the neural jammer not to disrupt their communications, but to feed them false information. Make them think we are doing one thing while we do another." Lieutenant Jiwoo modified the jammer quickly. Instead of just blocking signals, it would broadcast fake tactical data. The swarm would receive what appeared to be valid information from their own ships, but it would all be lies. They activated the modified jammer. False signals flooded the swarm network. Enemy vessels received reports of human fleet movements that were not happening. They got data about weapon capabilities that were wrong. They believed Earth's moon base was the primary command center when it was actually just a minor outpost. War Master Nix Vel, believing the false intelligence, committed a major force to assault the moon. It was exactly what Tae Min had hoped for. The defending fleet, positioned perfectly for the trap, caught the swarm force in a devastating crossfire. Hundreds of Ravager ships were destroyed in minutes. Nix Vel realized the deception too late. He tried to recall his forces and reorganize, but the false signals were everywhere now. The hive mind could not trust its own network. Coordination collapsed. Individual ship commanders had to make decisions without guidance from the collective consciousness. And individuals were what humans excelled at fighting. The battle turned into a rout. The swarm, which had come to destroy Earth through overwhelming force, found themselves being systematically destroyed. The Council fleet, fighting with human tactics and enhanced by alien technology, showed no mercy. They had seen what the Ravagers did to those they conquered. There would be no quarter given. Commander Heejin coordinated targeting across the entire fleet. She identified swarm command vessels and prioritized them for destruction. Every enemy leader killed made the Ravagers less organized. Every communication node destroyed made them more vulnerable to the false signals. It was brutal, efficient warfare executed with mathematical precision. The Aegis Prime detected War Master Nixvel's command vessel trying to escape to the edge of the solar system. Taemin looked at his crew. They were exhausted. The ship was falling apart around them, but there was still fight left in them. "Pursue," he ordered. "That creature tried to destroy our world. We will not let him escape." The chase was desperate. Nixvel's ship was faster than the crippled Aegis Prime. But Jiwoo performed another miracle, coaxing one final burst of speed from engines that should have failed hours ago. They got close enough for weapons range. The Aegis Prime fired everything: railguns, missiles, emergency flares, even the backup point defense systems. The barrage was uncoordinated and desperate, but there was so much fire that Nixvel's damaged ship could not evade it all. The War Master's vessel broke apart, scattering debris across space. Through the hive mind connection, every surviving Ravager felt Nixvel die. They felt his final realization. Humanity was not primitive. They were not weak. They were different. And that difference made them more dangerous than any species the swarm had ever encountered. The remaining Ravager ships retreated from Earth's solar system. They would survive. They would rebuild. But they would remember this defeat. They would remember that humans fought not with superior technology, but with superior determination. The Aegis Prime returned to Earth orbit. The ship was barely recognizable. Entire sections were missing. The hull was scarred and melted. One of the engines was completely dead, but it was still flying, still fighting, still protecting. The cost had been terrible. Earth's orbital infrastructure was devastated. Several cities had taken damage from falling debris. Thousands died in the defense. The Aegis Prime had lost more than half its crew. But Earth survived. Humanity endured. And their place in the galaxy was secured through blood and courage. 6 months later, Captain Taemin stood in the Galactic Council chambers. Not as a supplicant, not as a junior member, but as an honored representative of a species that had proven its worth. The Council had voted to integrate human tactical doctrine into their military academies. Human warship designs were being studied and copied. Commander Hyejin had been appointed as a permanent tactical advisor. Dr. Yunji worked with scientists from dozens of species, sharing the neural jamming technology that had saved Earth. Lieutenant Jiwoo led engineering teams designing the next generation of warships that combined human durability with alien technology. A memorial was built at Nexus Station, bearing the names of all who fell defending the Council. Sergeant Daejung's name was there, along with her Marines who had sacrificed everything. The Aegis Prime itself was retired from active service. The damage was too severe to repair fully, but the ship was not scrapped. It became a museum, preserved exactly as it had appeared after the final battle. Visitors from across the galaxy came to see the primitive human warship that had changed everything. They walked its scarred corridors. They read the names painted on the hull, each one a battle, each one a story. Counselor Thelwyn visited Taemin one last time before he returned to active duty on a new ship. "You taught us something important, Captain. Military might is not just about technology. It is about the beings who use that technology. It is about courage and sacrifice and the will to do whatever survival requires."